Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that show.
Boom. Well, we did season 1, so it makes sense that we would come back and revisit season 2 of Doom Patrol.
Mhm.
I guess, yeah. This definitely feels like a season that somehow was affected by COVID. Just based off of the weird number of episodes.
Yeah, 9
And-
to be exact.
Yeah, versus the 15 of the last.
Yeah,
season.
and the abrupt ending that we're going to talk about for this, you know.
Yeah.
Which
So I
is-
guess just putting that out there ahead of time that obviously there's going to be a couple of years just in general where a bunch of stuff was affected by COVID, and I feel like this must be one of them.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all, knowing when the air dates was and all that kind of stuff. Because when we get to the finale episode, so to speak, I'm like, oh, okay, there's definitely going to be an impact here, for the rating. But yeah, like this is a COVID affected kind of production that I think must have been the case, especially with how they kept so much of the Doom Patrol separate in this season. It was just like, okay, I don't know if that was actually what was happening, but probably one of the more creative ways to kind of figure out how to deliver during a pandemic.
I would imagine, yeah. But it's only something I thought about right before we started recording that, like, oh,
Mhm.
that's because I think for me the show still works because I care about the characters, but I feel like this season, and I mean, it seems like it must be part of their plan anyway, was more just hanging out with the characters than there
Mhm.
was like an overarching villain that they had to deal with. And I think there is one, but I don't genuinely feel that was the focus. I think the focus was like, as you said, hey, let's really dig into their like individual demons. And yes, I am aware that there is a form of a ticking clock in the sense of Dorothy and what she could do, but it doesn't feel like they're like, it's not like Mr. Nobody. Is
Yeah.
basically what I'm saying. Like,
There's
Mr.
no
Nobody was like driving the thing, and obviously in the first season there's a split of like, yeah, like you're gonna hang out with these characters, they're gonna do their individual thing, and then we're gonna kind of bring it all together in the
Mhm.
second bit of it, and not even half, but just the last little bit of this is
Yeah.
gonna be back to focusing on the big idea for the season.
Yeah, because to me, the whole, like, if there was a centralized villain, I'm like, it's Niles. It's Niles to me. And I'm just like, because I hate this character. He's like he's a shittier
I know what you mean
version
because
of
I don't
Professor
like
X.
him, but I don't like. I'm assuming you just mean he was your villain because they're
Yes.
obviously trying to make you feel bad for him in this.
Correct.
Season.
They're
Yeah.
trying to make us empathetic and sympathetic for it. I'm just like, no, this guy's just like L after L after L, and I'm like, no, this guy, and now, oh, he's dying, and I'm like, okay, but to save your daughter, that is like maybe a global doom thing, and just like how you treated your own daughter the entire time, I'm just like, and how he treats the mother especially, I'm like, everything about this character sucks to me. I'm
Yeah.
like, good, go die. I don't care. Like, just I want to see the Doom Patrol without Niles.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, we've just got off our X-Men. I said it when we did the first season as well. I don't like Niles. I don't like Professor X. It's all
Yep.
they are intertwined in that way. I'm
Definitely
just like,
so.
yeah, I don't need him, but obviously he's around a lot more this season.
Yeah.
It's more of him driving things forward or slowing things down as it pertains to keeping his daughter a certain age or just keeping her alive.
Yep. And how like selective he is, because the conflict that he has between him and Cliff especially, I'm like very I'm like, yeah, Why did you make that call? Like it wasn't deemed important. But then you have your own daughter that you're doing all these heavily unethical things towards
Hmm.
and being like, "Oh, you all have to respect me because I did you." And like and basically how he's in what Jane goes through with a lot of Niles is the idea of like, okay, how much Stockholm syndrome do these characters have with him right now? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, yes,
It
everyone
it
deserved to be
does feel
safe.
like yeah, Cliff is the only one being like, no, fuck this guy. Like
Yeah.
we're not safe with him, and everyone. And that is, I I think something I do like is that it's true to the characters. That it's like, no, like, do you like we are so um insecure that this is the only form of security we have. We're not letting go of this,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
other
shitty
than Cliff.
yeah, it's a shitty position that Niles has put everyone here to be super hyper codependent on him and his ego with all this kind of crap. So it's just I
Although
don't like it.
I do think that Larry also seems to kind of just be like, I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
I do think Negative Man is kind of just like, no, I'm doing my family thing. Everyone does have their individual thing, but I feel like Larry only comes back for the team and not necessarily Niles.
Yes.
Versus, uh, what is her? Why am I forgetting her name? Obviously Jane, obviously Vic, but who's the
Rita?
Alaska? Rita. Yeah, those three do seem to kind of be like, I'm kind of here for the Niles of this.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like yes, we're a team, and I'm Rita. That's why it was interesting to me that I forgot her name. That Rita is one of the more interesting characters to me, just because I feel like the way they write her, and obviously the actor, she is able to actually easily work with any of the characters.
Mhm,
Like anybody you put her up with, I'm like, yeah, this is interesting.
mhm,
And that I can't say that for every character, but I do think that she has these genuine bonds and connections with each character.
mhm.
So I find that interesting, but she still is very much like, well, I'm here for Niles, and it does feel like this season a little bit more Victor to be like, you're actually a hero. Can you please help me? And it always bothered me whenever he'd be like, you're not good at this.
Yeah.
And I know the first time he flat out says, you can never cut it, was to motivate her, but it does feel like he's overall like, no, you're not gonna be good at this.
Yeah, yeah. Cyborg's energy is always like, "Oh, I was part of the Justice League." I'm like, "But this is whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, dude, like why are you here then? Why are you
I don't think
be
that is his energy. I think they put him on that pedestal, and he is not actively saying, no, that's not me, but he's obviously through his actions showing you that's not me. I'm here because I'm comfortable with you guys, not them.
I mean, fair enough. That fair enough. That's true. Um,
I think he's got too much pride, and also it's hard to do that when people are putting you on a pedestal. But I don't think
yeah.
his energy is, I'm part of the Justice League. I know what I'm doing.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, because like obviously Cyborg is figuring out his shit throughout the this entire season and all that kind of stuff. And I was gonna like say like Larry and both Cliff because they're resolving their own family stuff
Mm-hmm.
in their own right. They're kind of doing that versus Cyborg. That's why they can actually move away from the Doom Patrol very,
Mm-hmm.
very successfully versus everyone else is like, yeah, as fucked up as Niles is, he's the only one that loved us and all that kind of crap,
Yeah.
including Cyborg, because now Cyborg's very, very clearly like, yeah, my dad was like, kind of like Niles in that sense of like screwing around with all that kind of stuff.
He's got a bit more plausible deniability with Niles.
Correct.
Like with his dad, it's like, you're supposed to be my dad. You treated
Yeah.
me like no. At least Niles is kind of like, well, he's not actually family. He's just doing it like he's just doing me a favor.
Yeah, it's same, but different to a lesser degree. But still very much like, oh yeah, we're just gonna have the same kind of mad scientist energy that's just like, oh, I'm misunderstood. I'm like, no,
Hmm.
no, you're not misunderstood. You're just a shitty person, Niles.
Yeah, I'm not a Niles fan, but I do.
I'm
Yeah,
so anti-Niles.
this season, obviously introduced Dorothy.
Hmm.
She's at the end of last season, but this is like a big. It's about her this season,
Yes, it's very much
and
about her.
who is, I guess, the offspring of when Niles in that first season episode was caught in the wilderness.
Hmm.
Um, and she could bring up part, like she could bring forth the end of the world if she
Yep.
ever came into her womanhood, I guess is
Mhm.
what they're saying. And I guess kind of like in versions of the X-Men that I've seen, which is like the movies, is like the Professor X of like being like, Jean could become Phoenix. I'm gonna just suppress this. And
Mhm.
so Niles has been like, I'm gonna just suppress her ability to actually grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I do like throughout the show, her frustration with like when she's hanging out with the little kid version of Jane, and
Mm.
even the demon's kind of like, I already know you're upset that you're playing with the kid, even though you're not a kid, but you have to play with this kid. And I was
Mhm.
like, I really appreciate that they add stuff like that, where it's like,
Mhm.
I look like a kid, I am not a kid.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I can't wait to speak to Jane's development throughout this whole season. And like the whole overarching theme here seems to be like uh definitely a lot of queerness and reproductive rights and all that kind of stuff, and like relationships in general when they get to like all that kind of stuff. But I think Jane's character development throughout this whole thing is heavily fascinating. It's so fascinating what she goes through with her powers, which again, like we said in the first season, I'm like, I don't understand how that is a power. It seems to be more like detrimental to her life than anything else. And you know, powers out of trauma, especially that kind of sexual trauma that they showed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, nuts, nuts. And they doubled down, they did more here, and I'm like, holy crap, this character is just wild
Yeah,
with
it's a lot.
everything. It's a lot. And I've got a lot to say when we get to the Sex Patrol episode for sure. But yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I guess we could do the episodes. So the
Mhm.
first episode introduces the backstory of, I guess, Niles acknowledging he has this daughter who's been caught in the circus. And it's really upsetting.
It's
I
so
mean, this
upsetting.
show is upsetting, obviously.
Yeah.
You just from the very beginning where they're throwing stuff at her, and you're just like, "Fuck off, everybody! Please
Yeah.
let this little girl be." And then obviously you understand that she's probably older than a little girl
Mhm.
at that point, but still, it is very hard to watch. And
Terrible. It's terrible. And the idea of like, oh, Niles had this child with a woman of color, let's just say. And it's just basically like, yeah, I'm just gonna be detached from this, but then still like, okay, I'm gonna put you out of sight, out of mind. I'm just like, oh my God, there's
mhm,
no redemption for this character, for me, anyways. I'm like, this guy
no,
sucks.
I'm
This
not
guy
into it.
really sucks. I hate every decision he's made, and it's just like, great, another white guy that's fathered a woman, a fathered a child, and just does not want to deal with it. But then at the end of the day, is still like making everyone else be like, I have to do this for her. I'm like, this is just it's just shitty. It's just shitty all around. All the visuals in this, I'm like, I'm not having fun here. I really like how Cliff was like actually connecting with her, with Dorothy, and like in those kind of moments. I thought that was
When they were still mini,
yeah, when they were
and
still mini and driving around and all that kind of stuff. I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, this is cool. Like I'm glad Cliff is getting that whole experience of like what he missed out on in his fatherhood and all that. Um,
I
you
think they
know,
were more showing that's the only part he was good at, is the having the fun part with his
exactly.
kid.
Yeah, because everything else he just kind of sucked at
Yeah.
for sure.
I think that's what they were showing, is like he can very
Mhm.
easily slip into the fun guy
Yep.
thing with her.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he's obviously pushing back on connecting with her because he would
Yep.
rather be connecting with his actual daughter.
Yep.
And it is also just like, hey, fuck you, I don't want to take care of more of Niles' problems.
Yeah. And I'm like,
It should
yeah,
be
I'm
Niles connecting.
yeah, it should be. It's right. He should be. Every single time Cliff is like, I'm a better father than you. I'm like, you know what? You kind of are. You're not a good father, but you are a better father than Niles is, as
Yes.
far as I'm concerned.
I think what the show at least leaves me with is he's not a good father for what he did to that person's mother. Like that's not good. That's not good stuff at all. And
Yep.
obviously he's very reckless, but he genuinely cares about his kid.
Yes.
That part wasn't up for debate, and it seems like he was able to be there in moments, not
Hmm.
as much as he needed to be for his kid to
Hmm.
have the fun part of it. But yeah, like you said, I really like what Cliff goes through in this season,
Hmm.
and needing to work on getting back to his daughter. But yeah, I think this episode, we don't even really have to do it episode by episode, but like, yeah, in general, yes, this is him kind of like, Dorothy's kind of touching base with every character, and you understand she's got imaginary friends she talks to,
Hmm.
and specifically they show up when she's scared or really excited. There's another one, but I think it's like scared and something else, which seems similar, and then really excited is the other one. And
Hmm.
so obviously one of them shows up when she's zooming around with Cliff.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, this is also where you see Victor and Rita like working on her superpowers, and me being like, just, you did this last season too, Victor. Just embrace being nice to these people.
Yeah.
Stop being so mean.
You know, the part that comes full circle to me at the end is like at the finale episode where it's like, okay, so you obviously have this image in your head that is like you need validation, right?
Mhm.
Everyone needs validation, but you're gonna be like your dad? Like what? It makes no sense. Like, be different, man. Like, what are you doing
Well, that
here?
his imaginary
Yeah,
friend looks like his dad. I think.
I think
Yeah,
that's a good
I don't think that's him
representation.
saying he's like his dad. I think that's him being like, his dad is so in his head that even his imaginary friend is that.
No, I that the visuals of his imaginary friend looking like his dad to me makes sense, right? It's just like, oh, I
Yeah.
wish my dad was more loving and more vocal. Like that makes sense. But what I'm saying is like his behaviors towards Rita, like you said in season one, he's doing it again where it's like, oh, you're just gonna make people you're
Well,
just
that
gonna
was him and Cliff in first season.
right,
Yeah,
exactly. But he's
when
just
Cliff was like,
doing
"Can you
that
help
with
me with my daughter stuff?"
yeah, but now he's doing it to Rita, and I'm
Hmm.
like, oh man, I thought we were through this already. But sure, I guess this is your the Vic Stone like day one lesson of like I'm just gonna insult you till you do the thing, and then we're like, okay, cool, let's do it without the insults next time. I'm like, God damn it, I don't like that.
Yeah, I
Negative
think it's different.
reinforcement, not
There's
good.
it's different situations. The first season is him refusing to help, and the
Sure.
second season is him uh not committing to helping in a
Hmm.
way of like, I'm here physically, but I'm not actually doing anything that's gonna help you. And I read that as he feels like his dad is too involved, and he's trying to be like, well, I'm not gonna overstep like my dad. And in doing so, he's fucking up these relationships, or in my eyes, fucking up relationships.
Yeah, he's just like I need this for the family and the acceptance and all that kind of stuff, but not actively contributing to that too. And that part to me is like, oh, that just
He's
seems
stunted.
selfish. He's stunted. Yeah, it's.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, I can't. I think all of them have their blind spots. I think this is his blind, not even blind spot. It's, as I said, him being like, this is how I know how to help, because the only other way is my dad's way, which is overstepping.
yeah, sure, and that's fair. That's fine. But you're right that all these characters have problems. Like they're all born out of trauma, really. So you can't expect them to be like, and I don't expect any character to be perfect. But it's just like
Yeah.
to rehash the same kind of thing is
Well, that's
to
what I'm saying. I don't
me
think it's the same thing this
okay.
time.
It's slightly different. I'll give you that.
Well,
But
yeah,
yeah,
because this is him being like, I'm here. We've got a scheduled thing we do. And the
mhm.
other one was like, I'm not helping you. That's beneath me.
Right, right, right. Yeah. But it's important to know that at the end of this episode, we and Niles gives up his Stone of Immortality necklace to
Mhm.
get out of this miniaturized kind of place that they find themselves in. And then we're like, oh yeah, he's dying now.
Yeah.
And it's like a race against time. And
Because
I'm
he's like
like
130 something years old.
130.
It's the Calder guy from the first season. He's like the magic man.
Yeah.
That's who Niles summons with his blood and song and stuff.
Yep. Yep. And I'm like, all right, sure. Could have done this sooner, I guess. But that's Niles in a nutshell.
Yeah, because at first I was like, oh, does he not want to give up his daughter? Because that seemed like part of the plan as well.
It did. It
It
did.
was like Calder's like, well, I get your daughter then. If that, but I feel like that's a later reveal, or maybe it was the first reveal, and I just wasn't paying attention in it. luckily they put it again in there.
Yeah.
Because he's like, no, wait, the part of the deal was just. He's like, I never said what I was going to do with her when I get her. And it was like, you're going to kill my daughter. No, this is what I was avoiding.
Yeah. Even though she's got the powers that she does, but we learn that later.
Yeah.
We learn that later. Now they in episode 2 they are not small anymore. They're not Fun Size Patrol. They are Time Patrol. And they're just kind of like, this is where they start branching off and doing their own thing. Larry's doing the funeral of his son, right? And
right,
then
because he saw that his son died,
yeah,
committed suicide specifically.
yeah. Vic meets Ronnie. In Niles and Dorothy are doing a quest reluctantly, and Rita's doing her own thing. But they're pursuing Dr. Time, and it's fun visuals. But to me, I'm like,
I do think the show does a good job with the visuals, even like when you're like,
oh, very
it's
much
kind
so.
of janky. It's always like like when you realize not only are they miniature, but they're on a fake like board, like they're on a toy, so like it's not just, oh, it looks weird for no reason. I think they put a lot of thought into the visuals. And the writing. I would say the writing, there's a lot of good payoff to stuff. Like I found myself being like, why would you do that? And then be like, oh, that's why. Okay, that was fair enough. Okay.
The one thing that I do like about this show is like, because of season 1, it's just like, okay, they'll set something up that'll have payoff in another episode. And they do that too in this season, very, very much so. And that's what I like about the writing of the show, is it's not going to be neatly tied up in a bow at the end of the episode, and that's okay, because there's payoff later on, and that is consistent throughout this season as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think obviously, as you said, meeting Ronnie is the big Victor storyline. He finds someone else who has been altered by, I mean, she was an actual like soldier. He just got fucked up by his dad's ambition, I think, is the idea there.
Yep.
But they've been made to look different and feel different and have parts of people they don't want to have parts of inside of them. And have been altered. So yeah, that's like the big thing, is him being able to relate to someone in that way. Yeah,
it's they're trauma bonding essentially, and it's wild, because I like especially how Ronnie goes like, hey, can we call this what it is, and just like not do that thing where you're like, oh, you think I'm cute, I like you, and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense for the trauma that they're trying to relay here. It's just like, let's just use each other and not get feelings attached. But he does get feelings, and it leads him to a very, very interesting story development through this whole season, I think. But yeah, the episode 3 is Pain Patrol, where Niles, Reed, and Larry are like doing this interdimensional palace thing of Red Jack. It's taking Larry prisoner. It gets so I love how weird the show is. It's so weird. It's really fun.
I find that, as I said, I like spending time with these characters, so for me, lack of forward motion doesn't really bother me. It's not like, I did find myself less actively engaged than the first season, but I still was enjoying spending time with these characters.
For sure. This nothing really notable about this episode to me anyways, but well, this is the episode.
Dorothy breaks Danny, who I love Danny, so I was kind of like, Dorothy, fuck you.
Dorothy's a dummy.
No, she's not. She just never had a chance to be herself.
Well, you're just perpetually treated as a child. Like, but it's just so like, you broke Danny. Yeah. Why? Danny's our favorite character, and he's just a straight. You broke him. But which leads us into episode 4, which is Sex Patrol. This is a fun episode. I was just like, no way are they doing these themes. This is hilarious.
Because this is where they just, for the rest of the season, they're just infested with sex ghosts.
Yeah. They're just like, sex becomes the
sex demon comes, but then like they defeat him, but also it's like just randomly throughout other episodes of like, oh yeah, like I guess these people are still here fucking.
Yeah, it's so funny. Just randomly, like, oh, there's like an orgy going on in the background with ghosts, and they're just like having a conversation. I'm like, this is fucking hilarious. It's
Yeah.
so good. And I love that the whole point of this episode is like they're throwing a massive party to save Danny to
Mhm.
revitalize his heart. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And but then the sex police show up and they're
Mhm.
like preventing, and this is the thing that I think is really really funny about this whole season is its commentary on queerness and reproductive rights and all that kind of stuff. But the idea is like, no, they can't, you can't have a child. That's what's gonna destroy everything. If the child cries, and it's just like it gets real now. It's
Mhm.
it's really fun. It's so fun. It's like and what is it? Yeah, the thing I think funny is like Cliff is like, yeah, Cliff, you have to go kill the baby because you're the only one that can't orgasm again. And I'm like, it just brings me back to season 1 where I'm like, yeah, you
Where he
fake.
pretended, yeah.
Yeah, but I also like here, it's like the one time I do like Niles is like, oh, good, yeah, give him ecstasy because your mind can still have fun, but
Mhm.
your body can't feel anything. And I just, this is a real fun episode. It's like, yeah, use ecstasy. Great, great stuff. Hilarious. And I love how he's like, you want drugs? Niles has got drugs. I'm like, this is great. It's
It
so
makes
good.
sense that he would have them, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, this and then we get into episode 5, Finger Patrol. Oof. Dorothy finds a friend in Baby Doll.
Yeah, this was the one I was talking about where it's
Yeah,
like
lots to unpack here.
Dorothy being like, yeah, like, sure, you're a little kid, but I'm not actually down to play these stupid kid games.
Yeah.
And I feel like Baby Doll catches on, and they obviously have beef.
Yes.
And we already know what Dorothy's capable of, but she does it to, I
Baby
guess,
Doll.
is the system K that they're in? I'm not going to use DID
K.
terms because they're specifically making it clear it's not that. Like it's a very specific to this show thing. It's not a real world thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, K, they like, because Dorothy's demon is able to like legitimately go inside and kill specific
Yeah.
or is it just that
Personas or-
because the personas came to the surface they die and we just look at it as inside of K?
This is the difficult thing, right? Because they're like, hey, we're not doing DID. I'm like, you
Yeah.
clearly are, though. Like, let's just call it what it is.
I don't want to do that because
I-
they're being very clear about what they're doing. Like,
Sure, I get
but,
that. But
Moon Knight was like, we're doing DID.
yes,
This
but
show
this
is like, this is something different, and I think it
Yeah.
would be insulting to be like, no, they're doing DID.
But I don't think it's insulting. I think
It
it's
is,
more
because
insulting.
They're like, it's manifesting superpowers and stuff. That's not DID.
Right. But this is the difficult part to me about this is like they're telling the story of DID and they're being like, but it's not DID. Well, I'm like, okay, if you look at DID, there's usually sexual trauma, usually a lot of abuse, which the show is very, very
I
gratuitous about
understand
showing
all
you
that.
that.
They're not doing DID though.
I know.
They're very specifically not.
But that's to me like the only way you can understand what's going on, because what they do here very clearly does resemble DID in regards to
I would
going
disagree
to
that
the
that's the
underground
only way
and
you
all
can
that kind of
understand what's
stuff.
happening.
It's,
I think if you know what DID is,
yeah,
it helps you. But I could
for sure.
promise you, people who don't know the ins and outs of DID
Mhm.
are very able to understand what's going on.
Yeah, and the people that do know the ins and outs of DID are just like, hey, it's a case by case basis.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of DID, right? And this is to me, I will say that I have understood. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. I'm treating it like DID, even though the show's like telling me that it's not, because they're just doing everything that it is. But basically, yeah, like the interesting thing is Dorothy can go into the mind aspect, play with the invisible friends, as she likes to call it, which are the personas or whatever of Jane, and Kay, or Baby Doll here, is killed because
She
Dorothy
kills two, doesn't she?
No, she kills Kay. First and foremost, she kills Kay. Like that's what one we see her actively doing, and then like we dive deeper into the whole Jane aspect of it all with
And
the
she
other.
kills Baby Doll, yes. But I thought
Yeah.
she killed two personas And then Jane is also like, but there's also these other personas that seem to be gone down the well.
Yes.
So I thought I might be misremembering.
But
I
that's
just
because
thought
we haven't met Miranda yet. That's why.
Yeah.
Because
No. I'm saying I understand that there's a bunch of personas missing,
right.
and that Jane is able to be like, because Miranda brings it up to her. Jane's like, well, those two died because of the whole Dorothy thing, and these other ones are just missing, so it's different. Like, she's trying to push it back on Miranda, like, no, this is different. This is not the same thing.
Yeah. It's tricky because like what's happening internally within Jane is like, hey, we need a new primary, like a new person to take over the primary role of keeping baby
Jane,
dolls
you're
safe.
Not doing a good job.
Because
Kay.
I mean,
you're not keeping Kay safe.
Yeah, because Kay legit dies in this, and then it's just like, yeah, you failed. You were supposed to protect this, and you didn't do that, and it's wild to me what's going on here, because I'm just like, well, this is. I know you're like, this is not. I'm like, this is kind of like DID, but this is the challenge. It's just, what is it? Who knows? But yeah, there's a funeral in the underground for Kay, and there's now like, this is not the episode where they do the intervention to be like, hey, you can't be primary anymore.
Yeah, I don't know when that happens.
I think that happens like in the next episode.
I wasn't going to do episode by episode. We could just talk about it if you want to talk about it.
Sure, yeah. But and this is the biggest thing. Like, I don't know when Miranda is introduced to this whole thing, but Miranda is like, hey, I need to be the primary. I need to do all this kind of stuff, and we're going to make decisions now going forward and all that kind of stuff, and taking it away from Jane.
Because I think, the idea was Jane felt pretty comfortable because she's like, well, Miranda's in the well. And then Miranda's like, nope. No, I'm not. I'm back.
Not anymore, baby. And all the other personas are like, including when Kay was alive, it's like, hey, I want to do all these things, and I can't do all these things when you're drugging yourself up and numbing yourself and doing all these kind of things to just kind of deal with the pain and the trauma and all that kind of stuff. And Jane's being like, understandably, hey, you don't know what it's like up there, and you know, all this kind of stuff. This is, who else is doing this the way I am, and all that kind of stuff. And Miranda's like, yeah, this is why I want to be primary, and I'm better suited towards it.
And I do like the conversation, well, not conversation, but the point Miranda makes of like, I know she's trying to, we know by watching the full season that Miranda is being manipulative and trying to take over. But in the moment when she says, you think that these personas leaving, not the ones who died, she's like, the other personas that you're accusing me of just moved on. That's progress. You're just trying to be doom and gloom like you always are. But this is a good thing if these personas don't feel the need to stick around and protect.
Yeah, which is, you know, at this point, I'm like, oh, damn, we are healing this. We are doing this, because we haven't figured out how manipulative Miranda actually is yet. And I'm like, okay, this is a good discussion. This is a good argument, because the treatment plan for DID is to start to remove those boundaries between personas and like reintegrate them all within the same person again, if that's ever successful. But Miranda brings up that really, really good point, is the idea of like, yeah, we're healing, we're moving on, we're getting better. You're the one holding us back by doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, damn, this is interesting. And especially with how Miranda presents herself when she is on the surface to everyone else. Even Cliff is like,
yo, I like Miranda.
Who's this? I like this, you know? And it's like, oh, I'm Miranda, I'm this.
I do like that Cliff is kind of just like, but where's Jane? It's like, yeah, you're cool. Where's Jane? Seriously.
Yeah, I do like that a lot. Cliff is very, very much attached to Jane, and has dealt with the idea of like, yeah, I'm not going to baby you like I did in the first season anymore. I actually have a good relationship with Jane, and like, as much as he likes Miranda, he's like, where's Jane?
Yeah,
this is weird now for him. And I think I like that he's the only one that cues in on that. Everyone else is like, yeah, all right, cool. We're not having to deal with Jane's outbursts anymore.
Yeah. And because Miranda is presenting like, oh, I'm the new primary, right? Like,
correct.
She's telling them actively. So then I guess for these other people that aren't as intimate with Jane, they're kind of like, okay, well, then that must be just a decision that was made.
Yeah. And then they're just like, great, we don't have to deal with those outbursts and the wild mood swings and all that kind of stuff.
I would still be like, nah, I want Jane back. But not because I think she's better, but just that if that was the persona that I was introduced to and working with, I would have been like, go away,
R-
Miranda.
right. It's yeah,
Just
but
out of the camaraderie,
yeah.
not out of like, oh no, Jane's clearly better.
Mhm. And this is why I'm like, okay, I know they say it's not the idea, but I'm like, it's the idea because of this. It's like the Miranda thing being like, yeah, that is how you would treat this kind of situation. You would move those personas, they'd fuse back in and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to keep those walls up within the underground and all that kind of stuff, which is why I'm just like, oh, they're doing all the things, but they're just being like, but it's a superpower. I'm like, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wildly interesting episode. And I think this is also the episode where Rita, you get to figure out her backstory a lot more too.
Oh, that yeah, she's fucked up because her mom was fucking people for jobs
For
for her.
roles and stuff like that. Yeah, 100%.
I really liked her anger because of that, because obviously
Mhm.
it explains a lot of her stuff in season 1 too, of how like mean she is, because it's like she doesn't know if she's supposed to be there or not. Like it's like it is almost justified imposter syndrome, because you're like, well, I know I didn't actually get it for being good. Like,
Yep.
and I can't let anyone ever feel like they can get close to me now, because
Yeah.
I saw how I got some of these roles.
hmm
It was not merit based. But then she speaks to that woman who's kind of like, I mean, you're allowed to be angry. You need an outlet for that, but maybe why don't you understand that, parents are dumb too. So like that's how your mom showed love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for better or worse, like I used to say all the time, like at what age did you figure out that your parents are stupid? And now now I'm just like, I changed that wording to at what age did you figure out your parents are human?
Yeah.
Instead of the superheroes that we believe that they are growing up. And this is just one of those she found out very, very young, but at the same time was very conflicted because she's like, yeah, I do want to be in the pictures and all this kind of
Well,
stuff.
she didn't find out young. She found out in that episode. Her whole thing is,
it's a repressed memory.
No, it's more, she had that, but that was her being like, you screwed me over then. Like
Sure.
you didn't believe in me. You didn't trust me, then you didn't believe in me, and so that was what it was. And so it wasn't looking at her parent as a human, it was looking at her parent as kind of like how Victor sees his dad, of this
Right.
overreaching being that won't ever let her be her. And that woman's conversation with her, the beekeeper's conversation with her, is that's fucked. Yeah, you shouldn't have to see that. That shouldn't be with you. But to me, I understand that as that was what your mom was willing to do to make sure that you were good.
Yeah. And it's
And by good, I mean well off, not mentally or
right. It's about the appearances, not about the actual person. And the thing I really, really like about this too is like when we go back to the Sex Patrol episode where Rita does put lipstick on Dorothy, and it says the exact same thing that her mom said to her, like, ladies stay still and all that kind of stuff, and puts the lipstick on her, and Niles is immediately like, well, she's too young for this and all that kind of stuff. And Rita's fighting back, and you see the payoff here in this episode. It's like, oh, why is she doing these things? Why did she do this? And then bam, wow. It's like, holy crap, these visuals are wild. So, and I like the fact that she's inspired by this beekeeper. Later on,
actively like, no, I have a dumbass kid. Like, I'm gonna have to look out for my kid. She's an idiot.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is drastically different than how she was raised. This is great for her. Like, it's so cool. And yeah, because it triggers her. She's like, how dare you speak of your child like that? And then she just lays it out, and she's like, oh yeah, there's a reason for that. You have to see their kids for what they are and not set them up for failure, like the imposter syndrome that she clearly has without the meritocracy. Like you said, just like, she got that role because she had sex with the producer, which is a way too common theme in old Hollywood. But yeah.
So she didn't feel like she had a chance to prove herself. And I like that even happens when she goes to the like community play and director, where she's the person like, okay, show me what you got. And like you hear her give the debrief of like, it was like I was talking to my mom, and like I just needed to impress her, I couldn't actually focus on the thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, I really like the play because she thought like, oh, we're doing Our Town, and they're like, no, not not that. Like we're writing about the Blob Lady, and I just like that she, when she's telling the actor who's playing her what was going on, and I like that the actor's like, oh, I thought I was doing that. So it's like you have the right instincts, you just don't have the talent to like do it, and so it's like
Hmm.
I like that it sets up Rita to be like, maybe she is talented because obviously this person understood what needed to happen but couldn't convey it.
Right. Right. Or yeah, it's just wild. Like when she responded, like, I thought I was doing that. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good writing.
Yeah,
Man,
like
it's
it wasn't
wild.
like, oh, you're way off. She was like, oh yes, 100%, but I thought I was already doing that. So I'm
Mhm.
just bad at this.
Yeah, yeah. And then later on, what is it? She gets like mono, and she can't do the role anymore.
Hmm.
And then it's given to Rita, and I'm like,
But who
oh,
someone did that for her, but I don't really understand how that worked out.
I neither do I. That's a little
Like
bit
it was her
unclear in my
mom, but I'm like,
mind.
but who is actually this?
Yeah.
Like what is happening? They physically show you the mom, and she's like, yeah, how do you think she got sick? And I'm like, sorry, who is doing this?
Yeah.
I should have paid attention more. I'm sure the show explained it, but I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't what. I was just like, okay, sure, it's the mom overreaching again, but I don't
Mhm.
really know how.
Yeah, neither do I. Or like, am I? Are we led to believe like, oh, Rita's like fragmenting and doing stuff like, and I'm like, oh, these
I don't,
splits and all that kind
I
of stuff. I
don't
don't think that's the
think
case
that's what
here,
they're doing.
but
Um,
to me, it's just,
it would be. I mean, they might, but just, and I have seen season 3 and most of season 4. I don't think that's the issue, but
okay.
I haven't seen all of season 4, so maybe it does get explained there.
Hmm. Hmm. We'll see, because I'm pretty sure, like, again, this is one of those things where it's like, okay, if we acknowledge the COVID-ness of this and it got chopped up and didn't get done and had to deliver
Hmm.
something, then I'm like, okay, that that would make more sense in all this kind of stuff. Um,
Um, I feel like we've also kind of skipped over the Larry of it all, which is he went to go see his son,
yes,
well, the remaining son, because he had 2 sons, and
right, right.
then the son basically sold him out to
Yeah,
like the
turns them
Bureau of
into the government.
Normalcy, and in that scuffle, his grandson gets shot,
Yep.
and I'm just like, fucking. I like those story beats where I'm just like, you assholes, you think like this
Hmm.
is gonna make things better,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's kind of what keeps Larry very firmly not coming back for Niles. Like he comes back for his friends, but not necessarily Niles. He's like, I really need to figure out what to do about my grandson,
Hmm.
how this affects my only living son who rejected me, and uh, they do that episode where it's like the idiot. Like well, I don't remember what it is, but it's the pink people that feed off of dumb ideas.
Dumb
Because
Patrol.
that was the one where I was just like, yeah, no, I know the episode now. I just don't remember the beings because I was just like, wait, this is your plan? Like every time he would go up, and then I'm like, oh, like they purposefully have drugged him to make him do dumb things.
Yeah.
I was just like, see, this is the show paying off because I was just like, what? No, why would you think this is a good idea? Like every time, and then obviously by the time Victor's saying "I love you" and stuff, you're like, okay, I already understand that they're doing. But I don't feel like they lead with that with the Larry stuff. So I'm just like, what is this idiot doing?
Yeah, yeah, it's good payoff, but
Hmm.
you got to be patient because it's not gonna give you a linear payoff the way you
Hmm.
hope it to be. But it is really really good. The dumb control thing. It's like, yeah, everyone's dumb. Or Vic's falling in love. He's doing all this. All it's such good writing.
And then when she's like, "Oh, you don't belong here. Your biggest mistake was thinking that," and he's like, "Oh," Larry's like, "Thanks for that." Like, she's like, "No, not you.
Not you,
No,
not
no, no."
you.
Uh, yeah, I really like that. And then basically, what's her name?
Rita?
The no, Victor's new friend,
Oh, Ronnie.
Ronnie, steals some of the like dumb juice. I don't really. I know what she ends up doing with it, but like that's kind of the payoff to this storyline is because Miranda wasn't truly affected,
Mhm.
and I think they established that early, but it's like a one line thing of like you're not they can't do this to you.
Mhm.
She gets them out of it again in a way where I'm like, why would she do this? Where she uses the persona that can shoot like words as weapons, but then just
Mhm.
makes the waterbed. I'm like, you could have just killed her. And I'm like, no, this way she can take everyone out at once. I was like, very smart. Like,
Yeah.
just be patient with the show. Like, it knows what it's doing. That it was like, no, create the waterbed incident and then electrocute everyone at once instead
Yeah.
of just one thing and then having everyone swarm you.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, right? Is Miranda's so well put together in this that you're just like, yeah, I guess we have to say goodbye to Jane. Like at this point, I was like, shit, I really liked Jane. And then I'm like, I guess we're gonna have Miranda going forward, and you know, what that's great from a crime fighting standpoint, but a big part of it felt uncomfortable to me. But yeah, Miranda, you're right, is very smart, very well put together, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's
They get out,
we'll
but then Ronnie's
yeah.
got like a jar, and I'm just like, oh, what? Because I didn't remember. I only remember they pretty much are at odds. For even though they're like, no, we like each other. I'm like, they're gonna stay at odds. I remembered that, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't remember what she's doing this other than you find out she went and killed people that fucked with her,
Yeah.
and so then Cyborg has a big showdown with her, and again, it's another interesting Rita moment because you don't know it at the time, but when he's having this showdown with Ronnie, and she bests him basically by forcing him to bring out a gun, and you're like, kind of like, well, you really willing to shoot her like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so she's able to just walk away because he's disgusted with himself. But you also see Rita was standing outside the whole time, being like, you got it. All right, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I
And
can't actually intervene in this, like,
so
physically, or like I'm not gonna be of help here.
I think the interesting thing to me about this is like, okay, Rita enters this play and being like, okay, there's nothing about your appearance that's different in theater geek people land and all that kind of stuff, and nobody recognizes who you are and nobody says anything about it, which is really weird. But then like I don't know who the other character is that just like, oh, Larry, when they show you the first time they meet, and Larry's just instantly, you're this person. And it's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, yeah, you've got recognizability behind your face. Why now that you're changing your arms and your powers and all that kind of stuff, it seems weird that there was no one else questioning.
I think it makes sense in the sense that like people, like I've seen it on the internet all the time where they're like, hey, this old person looks like Nicolas Cage, or this old, like, it's like, yeah, people
Sure.
just look the same, and you would just be like, well, there was a star that looked like that. I think it's weird that no one's like, hey, you look like, but I do think that it makes more sense for Larry, who's closer to the time she was alive, to be like, hey, you are this person,
True.
than someone who's like, well, you should have been dead 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, you must be this person.
Because the for there not to be a comment of those from the theater crowd, to me is just like, this is weird. It's weird.
I mean, to be a bit, well, actually, there is a divide between theater and film, right? So like theater
Sure.
people actively, especially the time that Rita would have been doing things, would have been like, yeah, that's cinema. Fuck that.
Right.
We do the real shit. Not, and again, there's too much time difference for that to matter, but there is a divide.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That makes a lot of sense. I just would have liked someone to be like,
someone should have said, you look like this person.
Yeah,
but
it's
I
like,
also get that people don't really like that in their, like, I don't mind it, but I think people were like, that was dumb when they did that in Ocean's 12, where they're like, oh, you look, and I get that it's of the whole ruse, but even just calling attention to the fact that Tess looks like Julia Roberts, I think people are kind of like,
right.
I could do without that.
Okay, fair enough. Good points. Yeah, but episode 8 is the dad patrol thing. This is where like the nitty gritty of the Jane in the underground stuff. The Jane stuff in this episode goes wild. For the next 2 episodes, it goes wild. Like to see the well and what was going through there and all that kind. I'm like,
stations being boarded
crap.
off.
Yeah. Holy crap. They paid so much attention to what to tell Jane's story here. It's wild. Like, I see why she left Orange is the New Black. She's like, I get to do all this diverse stuff. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, yeah, like when I was in season 1, I was like, oh, this is great for this actress because
Mhm.
she's very good at what she does on Orange is the New Black, but this clearly shows she has range.
Yes, she does a
Even if she was
lot
just
more with
doing
this.
one of the characters, she's not
Yep.
doing anything she did on Orange is the New Black,
Mhm.
but she gets to do a bunch of characters.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, but oh wow,
So
this
yeah, I guess this is
is
the idea that they're like, well, Kay needs her bear
yeah,
back, and Melissa Miranda's like, no, that's a bad idea, and Jane's like, you know what, I'm still the primary at this point, so we're doing it.
yep,
And Larry helps her,
yep.
and
And there's
it's
a
very
lot of
intense.
trauma
Yes,
and
it's very
discovered
hard
and
to
all that.
watch for me. I did not. I appreciate story wise what they're doing. I didn't really appreciate the experience of watching it.
No, it's tough, right? It's just like it's like rape scenes are very tough to
Yeah.
watch. It's like it's really tough to watch the dad being so goddamn abusive and how like long it lasted and when Miranda was developed and all this kind of stuff. It's wild. But I do like that Miranda was like, "Hey, I'm going to use this guy's like MO against him to get out of this situation once and for all." Like that to me was like pretty kind of cool and especially like how she layered in like here's how I'm gonna the bear and the note and all this kind of stuff. It's it's a tough episode to watch, but it's really well written. It's really well written. um
Uh, and
but
I
yeah.
mean, there's also the what I liked, which was the Cliff and his daughter
Yes.
stuff. Just how genuinely excited he was anytime she was like, "Here, I'm gonna be the adult here and give a peace
Mhm.
offering."
Yeah. And yeah, we didn't really talk enough about Cliff and what his ordeal is going through this whole season
So yeah,
and all
initially
that.
he goes to see his daughter, and she's kind of like, "What the fuck? Shut up! Get out of here!"
Hey, he just
And then he's like,
drops that bomb on her.
yeah, and she's like, I again, I think everyone reacts the way they should, which is a robot shows up and she says, "Yes, I remember you. You were at my stepdad's funeral, however she wants to word it. Like you were at my
Sure.
dad's funeral." And he's like, "Yeah, but I am your dad, and I just got turned into a robot." And yeah, fuck you. Don't mess with my head like that. And
Mhm.
he was like, "So what? You're just gonna you wanted a dad, and now you're just gonna drop this one?" I was like, "Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
she doesn't really know that you're telling the truth at all."
Yeah, how do you comprehend something
Yeah.
like that? It's just like,
But I
and
get his frustration of being like, I was
oh,
so
absolutely,
close. I was so close to this.
absolutely, I understand his frustration, and his character is really consistent in this, in a sense
Mhm.
where it's just like, yeah, you don't have that mental maturity to realize how big of a bomb you're dropping on someone on the day of their baby shower. It's like,
Yeah,
what the hell, dude?
I am annoyed at him here and later,
Yeah,
but uh, to your point, I can't expect him to be completely evolved.
right.
He is like other characters. We specifically said Cyborg, but most of the characters, he's stunted. So
Deeply flawed. Yeah.
this is where it's going to show up in his explosive reaction to this initial um inability to just completely buy what you're saying right now. But she does come back
Yep.
in this episode, and they hang out, they do things, he shows her around the house, they talk about the marriage, and I like that she's like, I'm gonna fuck it up because, you know, you and grandpa are not good at this.
Right.
And we even see a flashback to the how shit the grandfather was when it came to being married. And I like that Cliff was kind of like, I mean, even if you fuck up, like, at least you are gonna be aware. Like, I'm just telling you right now, like, yeah, it's hard. It's not gonna be this easy thing, but you, if you love this person, then you should stick with it. So like when you do feel like running, that's when you should be doubling down on sticking around.
Oh, 100%.
And I like that he's like, that doesn't mean that this advice I'm giving you means it's gonna work out. I'm just saying that at least you are open to what you're actually getting into now.
Yep. Yep, and he does do that. He's just like, I believe every part of it, how sincerely happy he is to be invited to
Hmm.
the wedding, and to be he wants to be a grandpa so bad and all this kind of stuff. I genuinely believe his effort towards this, which is why it like
Hmm.
breaks my heart in like the finale episode of Wax Patrol, where everyone's like, are you kidding me? You got to be here. The world's almost going to end. You cannot be at your thing.
Hmm.
And then he's just like heavily conflicted. I think he does it so well. And the phone
It's
call,
good, but I am annoyed when he's just like, I'm not gonna be able to make it for some reason. I'm like, no, just say like you've already like the only reason she showed up
mhm,
is because I think Niall sent the video. That's what he was looking for earlier in the season.
yes,
Was like, there's a video of the evidence that Niles is admitting all the shit he did to me that kept me away from my daughter.
correct.
And they were looking for it, and obviously Niles sends it because they go to space to get his daughter,
Mhm,
um, Dorothy. So I think she's already going to be primed to understand what you're going through and like the weird things that like it's happening during the previous episode Dad Patrol where
mhm.
he's telling her about the things that happen and she's not like she's like, wow, that really happened. Wow, that's so interesting. So I get the idea that he thinks like it is what it is, but I'm just like, oh, I really wish, and I'm not saying this would be in character. It's just for me, I was like, just give her the information that she needs to understand why you're
Yeah,
not going.
I completely agree. I completely agree. I'm like, it's not doing you any benefit or any favors right now because you're already told the truth. You already did the thing. That's
Hmm.
all out of the way. Why are you holding back now to be like, hey, gotta save the world so
Like
you can have
I
your
want you to have a
wedding?
good wedding day, so I'm gonna be doing this to make sure that your wedding day isn't ruined by the end of the world or something. Like
Yeah.
even if it was that, like I just like come on, and I understand that's not in character. I'm not saying
Mhm.
it should have happened. It was just, I guess, proof that I am invested in these characters, and I'm like, no, you're
Yes.
you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. And then also when he's like, I promise I'm going to be there for the birth. I'm like, don't promise something you can't
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
right now, man. Your
Well,
record of
I
showing
was
up
already
has
saying
not
that
been
when he was
great.
like, nothing can keep me from the wedding. Obviously, I've seen this already, but I was just
Yeah,
like, don't do that.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
say like, this is great. I'm so happy. You don't
yeah.
need to make any weird overcommitment here.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's just the guy that's making up for lost
Yeah,
time, and
he
I
says it. He
I
says, I
truly,
want to
yeah.
make up for now last time.
Yeah, and I truly believe that when he's like, "Yes, I get to go to a wedding," all that kind of stuff, that he had every intention. Like,
Oh yeah.
even I love the idea that he's like, "What am I gonna wear to this wedding? All I have is metal t-shirts." And then
Hmm.
Shane comes in and is like, "Sick collection."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, that's awesome." Which is the most dressiest of these? Like, do I do Metallica or ADC DC? I'm like, this is great. This is such great stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, because was it Larry who's like, you care about what you're gonna wear? I'm like, yeah. Why wouldn't he? But also, yeah, he can't go to a tailor and like right now and be like, just make me a suit.
Yeah. Just and plus
He's kind of these are his options.
I do like the idea that like I don't know who comforts him and goes like they're all going to be looking at the bride anyways,
It's
and
Larry.
I'm like, oh, it's Larry. I'm
Yeah,
like,
Larry is like,
that's
well, if it makes you feel better, everyone's gonna be looking at the bride.
yeah, I like that he says that, even though I'm like, no, people are going to clearly look at you and be like, why is there a robot identifying as your dad here? Like, what's going
Hmm.
on?
But
Yeah.
it's nice, yeah. Like as I said, I feel like Larry shows up for his friends.
Yes, he does. Larry is wonderful in that because I think the great thing about what Larry goes through in this is like, okay, he's tried to reconnect with his real family and then has relearned the idea of like, no, it's my chosen family that is more important to me, right?
I
In the
mean, I
Doom
don't think
Patrol.
that's what he comes away with. I think he's like, it's too late for the sons I fucked with, but I need to be there for the family I still have, which would be his grandson
Sure.
and the Doom Patrol.
Right. Right. But yeah, yeah. This Wax Patrol episode. This is a
Hmm.
wild one. There's a lot going on
So
here.
they show up at the X, and they're like, all of
That's what I
our.
was gonna say. I'm like, that looks like the
It
exhibition.
is, yeah.
Okay,
They're like,
yeah.
do you? Does Larry even have a imaginary friend that they deal with?
Yes.
Who's the imaginary friend with Larry?
Can't remember. I can't remember,
I
but everyone's
I
got
don't
one.
remember seeing Larry. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just like I just don't remember it. But as we already talked about Vic's imaginary friend, and I liked the creativity of Rita's. It was like clearly something she put together with paper. I like that a lot, and
Something that wouldn't threaten her and her visual appearance too, and all that kind of stuff too. I
Jesus
like those
being
touches.
Cliff's thing is, I'm like, I wonder how people feel about that. I find this hilarious, but I wonder how people react to Jesus being someone's imaginary friend.
Yeah, that was so funny to me.
I was like, wow, this is exactly why I like this show. But
yeah,
I wonder how this goes for other people.
Yeah, but I would imagine the people that would have issues with that would have been out after the whole Sex Patrol episode and the heavy sex themes throughout the whole season, and even like the payoff of like, oh, we actually see an orgy. What the hell? Like, this is crazy. Like in this episode, I'm just like, wow, they really went to these places. I can't believe this show got the green light to do that. It's wild.
But yeah, I guess they're all getting their ass kicked by their imaginary friends while they during the showdown, until Dorothy's kind of like, I get it. This is my thing to clean up. I gotta, and so she gets consumed.
So she steps up and she's gonna do the final battle, and then cut to black. Season's over.
And I was just like, I don't want to look at not the actor, Niles, the character, crying. I'm like, doesn't matter how well you're doing this. I don't care.
I don't even think he's doing it well. I'm like, oh, that's the cut they went with. This is just so bad.
I mean, I think what I'm getting across is it wouldn't matter how well he did it.
True.
It would not move me, because I'm so like, you had an opportunity to avoid this, not within this season, but in your lifetime, you had an opportunity to avoid this.
Yeah, for sure. And the idea of like, oh, well, then when were you gonna kill her? It's like, when I've had a chance to say goodbye properly. And I'm like, this is all about you again. This is such a bummer.
Just even feel like the idea of, if you were actually a parent to her, it wouldn't really be a concern, because she would grow up knowing what to do and what not to do, and like it wouldn't be like this accidental end of the earth or a vengeful end of the earth thing.
Yeah, like everything that Dorothy does is just speaking to his failures as a parent and how like not committed he actually is, and just being like, oh, I'm dying now, so I need to right the wrong, and it's all about him. And I'm like, oh god,
and the lying about like, oh yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm like,
yep. There, I'm like,
there's Cliff like
this guy sucks.
Optimistically saying stuff, and then there's Niles just being like, "Well, don't."
You're just straight lying.
I mean, we've said this a bunch of times on the podcast. Like, just give the people you care about the information they need.
Yeah,
when that's possible. Obviously, they don't have the right to every single thought you've ever had, but like, as it pertains to them and their desires, you probably should be giving them the information they need.
Absolutely. But here's the thing, right? This is what I've learned in my time with my self-development, is that you can't really expect honesty from people that can't be honest with themselves. And Niles is the furthest thing from being honest with himself ever. He still thinks he's like a good guy, and like, oh, I did this with the Doom Patrol, I saved these lives. I'm like, no, you're a shitty human being. Like, you're a shitty human being, just terrible. You're like way worse than Professor Xavier. Way worse. This is just so bad, everything he does. And I'm like, yeah, I would wish that they'd actually kill him off. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's going to be some magical thing that happens that kind of saves his life in season 3, and he keeps going as a part of this dysfunctional family. But yeah, Niles is a bum. I just don't like him.
Niles is a bum.
Yeah, I like the Miranda-ness of it all.
She pushes Jane into the well. Like, basically, like, this is in episode 8, I assume, is where Jane retrieves the bear that was going to help Kay with something, and she's like, honestly, now that I've done this, I understand why you thought that this was a bad idea. I got it, but like, I'm not gonna push up against your ideas anymore. Maybe you are the better primary. And Randy's just like, don't care, still putting you in the well. Thank you, bye-bye. And I think that's where Jane gets confirmation of all of the people that Miranda has put in the well. Yeah,
she killed like the overly sexual persona. She killed Kay. She killed all those kind of stuff in the well, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's where they went. But then also Miranda as primary, and this happens really, really fast. That she connects with someone, and they're swingers, and they're at an orgy party, and all this kind of stuff, and like this. It's oh god, it's a triggering episode, a triggering part where it's just like, yeah, she didn't. That was not enthusiastic consent, dude. This is just
Also,
oh
you didn't say we're going to have a swinging party. You said we're gonna have a party. So it's
yeah.
all fucked. Like, yeah,
The amount of
he is not a
coercion.
good like, and I don't think they were trying to. It's like that's not a good representation of how this works. This is just an
No,
asshole. Like,
yeah, this
guy is
guy's
terrible.
just straight up asshole. Like, and don't get me wrong, like I will tell you, like that is how it works sometimes. It is
Yeah,
how it works
but
sometimes.
like that
And
doesn't mean
those are
those are good
shitty
people.
people.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
are shitty, shitty people. And this is
yeah.
why consent's so important in that
Mhm.
kind of orgy-like environment and non-monogamy. But the idea of like, and someone has said this to me before in those kind of scenes, it's like the idea of like there's always there's a couple of different personas that go to these kind of parties. There's the rock star that wants to be like larger than life and living out their
Mhm.
best thing and showing off and all that kind of stuff. Then there's the lifers, the people that are genuinely there for the right reasons. And you know that don't get caught up in this because there are people that are there for the right reasons and doing this. And then there are the people that are being coerced into it, which is
Mhm.
exactly what Miranda um allowed herself to do and to be like, hey, I'm in control, like I own my own destiny, and this is a key, and this is I think one of the greatest things about this, the writers of this show, is the idea that someone born from sexual trauma would minimize and dismiss what sex means to them by doing things like this, and then being overwhelmed really, really quickly and being like, no, this is reliving my trauma and all that kind of like when she starts shifting
Mhm.
while that guy's on top of her, I'm like, holy shit, this is graphic. This is
Yeah.
wild.
More stuff I did not appreciate the experience of watching, but I understood what the point of it was.
Yes, yes, it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch, and that's the biggest thing is that
Especially because they cut to the dad at one point.
oh yeah. Yeah, that makes it so much worse. And but that's just the reality. There are these kind of things that happens at orgies and all that kind of stuff, and people that are like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna be a rock star." And then no, you aren't. No, you are not. You're not built different. You are not like them. It's just it's very, very activating kind of situation in this. But yeah, it's to me, I'm like, holy crap, they actually got to show an orgy on TV, and this is just it's fucked. It's wild. This show got a lot of pushed the boundaries a lot for what I was like expecting to see on TV.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was alluding to. Not
Mhm.
alluding to, I just think I just said it straight up when we did Titans, which was like they've already got Doom Patrol being like the edge lord thing, like doing the edgy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think Titans was the right group of characters to do like we're doubling down with this too now.
No, I
It's like
agree.
you could do stuff like you can have some variety in the storytelling.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be this edgy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you think of the group of characters. And I admit, yes, I don't know the Doom Patrol like that. I know Cyborg isn't part of it, but I don't know them like that. So it
Mhm.
was easier for me to just be like, I guess this is how these characters are being portrayed.
Mhm.
I know a lot more about the Titans characters that they use to be like, I just feel like we're doing. It seems a less successful edgy thing than Doom Patrol. And
Oh,
maybe that's just
100%.
maybe that's just because I know those characters or know more stories with those characters where they don't need to act like that.
Mhm.
But I
And
was just like, I just feel like this feels more authentic, and Titans feels like it's trying.
yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. It's this show is like everything that they do is edgy. It's pushing the envelope and it's earned. Versus in Titans, it's like, are you doing this just for shock value? Because it
Mhm.
genuinely feels like that
Yes, yeah,
sometimes.
that's how I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's rate this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it an 8. I think that it's very strong, and I like spending time with the characters. But I was aware that I wasn't like as actively engaged as season 1, and
Mhm.
I think that's because they didn't have the right overarching idea. It's a lot of what you said. Just well, we're just gonna hang out with these characters dealing with their own individual things. It didn't really feel like a team effort or like we were embracing the idea of having a team here.
Yeah, I'm giving it an 8.5. I really like that there's a lot of personal stuff here that I'm not going to directly identify
Mhm.
what is connecting here to me, but there's a lot of good stuff here that I
Yeah.
dug into, and I'm just like, oh, these writers really know what they're doing. This is real. The visuals of this is really, really well done. This is a great show. It fundamentally is. And to me, it's just like, it's an 8.5 with an asterisk being like, okay, at what point did COVID affect the production? Because to me, I'm looking at this being like, I'm curious about what season 3 is like. Because to me, is it season 3 or is it the second part of season 2? You know what I mean? Well, you've seen season 3 and 4 already, like you said.
I haven't seen all of season 4.
Right. But you've seen season 3, so
Mhm.
you'll better have a better understanding of whether or not that is the second part of season 2. But the fact that they just left us there with that, like, oh, Dorothy's gonna go do the final battle now, and then cut to black. I'm like, oh god damn it, that sucks. I really hate that. I get that it's a
Well,
good
the good news for
cliffhanger.
you is you don't have to wait for a year. You could just
Yeah.
watch it tomorrow.
I could watch it tomorrow, and yeah, but I will choose to watch it closer to when we actually decide to record that. But either way, I mean, this is fantastic. It's fantastic stuff. The writers really know what they're doing. There's a lot of discussion here. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the writers are involved in the actual kink and non-monogamy scene in Toronto itself, because a lot of detail within that actually made it through this episode. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. That's really, really cool. Let their like the freak flag fly in this particular show, because I think it's how they represent queerness, how they represent love, all that kind of stuff. It's fundamentally really good stuff to me. I love it.
It's a good show.
It's a great show.
All right.
8.5.
Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We're part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Game Movies, Contra Zoom Pod, and Springfield Googleplex. So please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, and more shows. If you want to hear older episodes of our show, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten or the podcast platform of your choice. You can rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, follow, do all that great stuff, and get in touch with us. We are at TDF Spoiled on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram, and our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. I should note, this is the last episode of the month. You're going to be hearing this in June. I'm going to be away, so our next episode will come out in July. So definitely follow us on social media to find out when the next episode is coming. Goodbye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.